Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again today for Safe Money Radio. And if you're watching online, you can see this beautiful, lovely face next to me here today, split screened with the lovely, adorable, my sis from Woodstock, Georgia, Heather Schreiber. Heather, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm always glad when we have time together. We have so much fun. I'm looking forward to it.
We do. And so if you're joining us for the first time, you might be listening on the radio. Just know you can go to YouTube or to Apple or to Spotify. If you want to watch this, just go to YouTube because we're going to be talking about a lot of incredible things today. And this is what I want to do. Heather, there's always, every day is a reminder to me of the power of being on the radio for 16 years because someone calls in yesterday and they're like, "Hey, I've been listening to you for 5 years." And they start regurgitating all the things I say all the time and stuff with you. So they're talking about all the stuff. And I'm like, no, they're not making it up. They really listen to us all the time and they know the stuff. And they had a triggering event in their life, which made them call to say, "Hey, it's time for me to come in and sit down and I need to start putting together my plan." And everyone's going to have these triggering events. It may be at age 50 or 55, or it may be because of retirement, the death of a spouse, turning 65 and entering Medicare. That we know we've done shows about all the key
Yep, all
triggering
those
events.
ages. Yep.
Yeah. So what I want to do is for those that are listening, I just to tell everyone a little bit about you and what you do down there in Georgia.
Down there in Georgia.
Yeah.
Well, down here in Georgia, it's a little bit overcast today, but I love it down here in the Peach State. But I basically help you, Brad. I sort of work behind the scenes with advisors, making sure that kind of keeping track of all of the changes. Lord knows, we both know how the laws tend to change on a dime. We just had the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that
Mhm.
wasn't as expansive as some of the other acts that affect retirement income planning, but certainly planning overall and tax planning. But I really have a passion and have for over 30 years, really keeping track of the way that, dynamic way that retirement income planning has changed. And we've seen so many changes if you've been in it as long as we have. Seen so
Yeah.
many changes. And so, it's hard for the average consumer to keep track of it and separate myth from fact, right? When you add the media into it, it's really hard to figure out on your own how and when to trigger certain things or social security, a topic that is obviously near and dear to my heart because it is so foundational to the retirement phase of life, and there's so much information, a lot of misinformation, and you
Yeah.
really want to get that right. So that's my passion. It's consumer advocacy, working with advisors and making sure we put a plan in place that works for each individual, each couple, each widow or widower. We encounter so many things every single day, and we just love to share it with all of you through this podcast.
I know we were talking before the holidays, and you're like, "I'm about to have to start jumping on the planes and flying all over everywhere because
Yeah.
you speak all over the country." And so I've always said, you're probably one of two people in life. You're the person who knows everything about everything, or you're the person who has to know the people who know everything about everything. And I'm the person who has to know the people who know everything. So I don't
No,
have to know it all.
you know a lot, but I learn something new every day, don't we? I mean, we learn something new every day, and what I love too is that we learn from our personal experiences. We were just talking about that before we went live.
Yes.
Our personal experiences, and boy, have we had some, both of us. I've had a significant one in 2025, and you have shared, the same, similar experiences. And I find that when I do travel, and I share those because those are the learning moments for they're teaching moments for me. And I'm always one that shares my personal experiences because it just really, it's one thing to teach about a concept, it's entirely different to live it. And so, I use those when I do talk to people and when I do go around the country and speak because I think it really resonates with a lot of people to hear your personal stories. And, I'm always learning something new.
Well, that's so powerful. And so, for those of you listening right now, in case you never have tuned in before, just know I've been hosting this show for 16 years. We celebrated 800 episodes this
Mhm.
last year. We had Heather on and Ed Slott, Tom Hegna, and lots of other key guests on the show. But we do talk about these things. I mean, before we went live, literally, we were talking about my younger brother who just
Mm,
spent a year in drug and alcohol
mm,
rehabilitation. He graduates on
mm.
Saturday. That's real life stuff
Yes.
happening to my family. I lost my father a couple of years ago, who was an
Mhm.
advisor in our practice. Heather's going to talk about the sandwich generation and what it's like when you have to place a parent in some type of long term care or assisted living. She's going through that right now. So, what you're going to find on this show, we're always going to have key guest experts, people who are specialists all across the country who talk to people just like you all across the country about how to plan for retirement. And one of the things I'm so excited about is that Heather has agreed to join us several times this year. We're going to do at least 6 episodes on Ask Heather. Ask the retirement expert your questions about Social Security planning, Medicare planning. Maybe you got an IRMA letter this year and you want to ask about mean old Aunt Irma, how that's going to impact you. If it's just for this year or next year, we're going to go into anything you want to talk about in future episodes. So just know if you're listening right now, you can go to ozarksretirement.com or Brad at ozarksretirement.com. Send me an email, send us a message, or you could call into the show 866-780-7233 and say, hey, I want to ask Heather XYZ questions, and then we'll deal with your questions on air. We're going to be talking about it in the future. And so today, as we're getting started on this first episode of the year, we're going to be talking about the following thing. 26 Social Security updates. There's some new information there. We're going to talk about what we talked about. What happens when you find yourself in the sandwich generation and you have parents moved back in with you and you still have children or grandchildren living with you and you're caught in the middle? And how do you plan for that? How do you prepare for that if you don't have a long-term care policy in place and the expenses involved and Medicaid spend down? We're going to talk about all kinds of fun stuff on the show today. So we're grateful to have Heather with us. I want to give you the information again right now. Just go to ozarksretirement.com, click on the Contact Us button in the upper right-hand corner, and you can schedule a free financial consultation. You'll see Heather's lovely picture on there. If you're driving around in the Ozarks, you'll see her face on our billboards. She's part of our team. And I love it knowing that no matter what the question is, we can go to someone like Heather and say, hey, here's the situation. What do we do in this situation? And she's going to come up with answers that we didn't have before. So I know she finds this a lot of fun. And so we'll be right back after this message. Call us anytime, 866-780-7233. There's always someone standing by to take your call. Okay, friends, thank you for joining us today. We've got Heather Schreiber on the show, national Social Security expert. She's a fellow retirement income certified professional, graduate through the American College. And I know, Heather, you speak at a lot of different events. You actually are going to the big conference this year, year number 2 for the American College that's coming up in May. I think we're going to be together in Florida.
We are. I'm excited about that. That's going to be an amazing conference with a lot of thought leaders with just different perspectives. And again, it'll be a learning event. I'm sure that we'll both take something away that is just valuable to share with our clients that we serve. So I'm super excited about that particular event.
It's
And we'll be together to have live radio shows there, whatever you're gonna do. I know you're interviewing people and
yes.
doing the thing. You've become the spokesmodel for the American College's interviews at the Horizons event, so I look forward to being one of your interviewees.
You bet. We're gonna have you and the this cloud of witnesses, these incredibly brilliant people, and I get to ask them the questions about retirement planning. So I look forward to it. So I tell you what, let's do. Let's jump right into 2026 because we always record this a couple of weeks before it airs. So those of you listening, you're probably going to hear this in late January, early February, but this is January 6th with us recording this, and we just so happy New Year, everyone. How are you doing on your resolutions? Are you still the experts say it lasts less than 30 days. So are you still doing it when you hear this show? Because we're probably not 6 days in recording it. So
I don't even think I made any. I'm still trying to catch up from 2025.
that's
I
it.
just feel it turned 2025, and here we are sitting in 2026.
And that's going to be the whole reoccurring theme today is just how quickly things
Mhm.
happen. Because yesterday I had a 55-year-old say, I've been listening to you for a long time. I want to start putting together a plan in place, but I know I've still got time. And I said, hey, we're
Mhm.
the same age. I turned
Yeah.
the double nickel this year, 55. I'm 54 right now. I said, we're
Mhm.
going to blink and we'll be on Medicare. So you better
Right.
have the plan. We better be working on it right now. So
Mhm.
2026, hit us with some of the Social Security updates that were announced for this year.
Yeah, so every year we eagerly anticipate what's going to happen with the cost of living adjustment. Landed a little bit higher than we anticipated. Last year, as we know, the cost of living adjustment was 2.5%.
Yeah.
lower than it had been a few years before that. We got these record high cost of living adjustments that, obviously were in line with what inflation was doing this year, starting with the deposits that occurred in January. So people will see it in their January deposits is a 2.8% cost of living adjustment. Not bad. It's a little bit higher than last year. It averages a whopping $56 for the average income beneficiary. However, the flip side is that the Medicare premium for Part B went from $185 in 2025 all the way up to 202.90. So that was almost a 10% jump. So, as we've been talking about, healthcare, costs are increasing. And so we see that this was a higher jump than the year before. I think the year before 2024 was 174.90, I think, and
Yeah.
it went up to 185. So there was a steeper jump. So that does take some of that 2.8% away. Again, so planning as early as you can. Obviously, timing is critical. Start now. Don't keep putting it off. But so that's one thing. The Social Security taxable earnings went up to 184,100, I think, somewhere around there. I think I'm right. 184.5 maybe. Earnings limits went slightly up, so that's something you always want to be aware of, that if you plan to claim benefits before you reach your full retirement age, there is only a certain amount of income you can earn before Social Security says, wait a minute, if you earn, and this is just to earnings or net employment for income from self-employment, if you earn over these thresholds, roughly 24,000, if you're under full retirement age the whole year, then Social Security says, hey, we're going to reduce or withhold your benefits to the tune of 50% of that excess income over that amount. Now, we're not talking IRA distributions, pension income, rental income in most cases, things like that, dividends, capital gains, those are passive, right? We're talking about earnings, but those numbers do go up slightly. I usually recommend if you're working, try to find some other income source if you're needing a bridge, just because it becomes a headache. You might likely end up paying taxes on some of the benefit if you do that. So those numbers went up slightly. What else? The average benefit, I think, is a little bit over 2,000 a month. And the maximum benefit for someone reaching full retirement age this year is 4,162. So that went up. So that's someone who had the highest Social Security taxable earnings throughout their highest 35 years. So those are some of the numbers. You can look at them yourselves if you just go to ssa.gov and type in 2026 COLA fact sheet. It gives you all of those numbers, and it'll give you a comparison of 2025. So those are some of the significant numbers to be aware of. The good news is, hey, Social Security is kind of like the pension, right? Of our most private workers, the only ones really receiving pensions anymore are public sector government employees. They're kind of fading away into the past. And so, most of them have been replaced by defined contribution plans. So that puts really the responsibility on the individual to save for their retirement. Only about 14%, according to the latest Bureau of Labor Statistics report that I saw, about 14% of non-governmental employees have access to a defined benefit plan. So if you think
Wow.
about it, Social Security really is the most pension-like source of income that is, inflation, protected on, it's not guaranteed, but, has an inflationary hedge. It's designed to last for a lifetime. It can pass on to a survivor if you have one, so I'm a big advocate for Social Security and making sure that you make the right choices there.
Yes, and I wanna talk about in the next episode, just how important it is to claim at the right time and all these different
Mhm.
strategies. We may talk about a couple of examples that I threw on you here recently, but that's I think I recently read that it's in the upper 60s percentile, that about 67, 68% Social Security provides the main source of income for
Mm,
67, 68% of people. So it's like for a lot of people, there's nothing else. It's just Social Security. But they may have a little bit of a pension. They may have an annuity they've created, some other side benefit. But it's a huge part of the income. So it's important to get that right.
it is. And if you think about those folks that do have or recall their parents having even a pension, now, that was a pretty big decision. They didn't just, point at one of the options and say, okay, I'll take that one, right? It was a careful decision about how do I want to take this? Do I want to take it over a single life, or do I want to take what's called a qualified and joint survivor option, where if I'm married, I'll take a little bit less because it's going to cover at certain a certain percentage to my surviving spouse. So it's the same thing with Social Security. You cannot look at that and just say, "Oh, my neighbor over here did it at this time. I'm just going to go ahead and do that." It's so critically important that A, you look at your own individual circumstances, needs, goals, other assets. There's so many things to look at, and you carefully you work with someone ideally because there's so much to know. Social Security is so complex. In fact,
Yes.
a former commissioner one time said that it takes a full year to train one employee to be able to do the job of answering questions about Social Security, and I believe it. I mean, I've been doing it for years, and I still sometimes dig into the weeds and go, "I didn't know that." So there's
Yeah.
a lot to know. So it's just so important that you really understand what your options are based upon what your needs are, what your goals are, what other assets you have. So I can spend an hour just on that.
Well, friends, those of you listening right now, we know there's a pretty good chance that a lot of you are close to age 65. And how do we know that? We're in the middle of peak 65. Our good friend Jason Fichtner says that for the next couple of years, there are some 13,000, fourteen
Mhm,
thousand people a day turning 65 every single day. And I know it's over 12. It's going to be stay at
mhm,
10 many, many years. And so we're hitting the peak of people turning 65 every single day. Pretty good chance those of you out there are turning 65 and you're either winging it because of what Heather said, your neighbor said it, or your friend at the golf course, or
mhm,
your buddies, or someone in your church life group said, "Oh, well, you should claim at 62 because the government's running out of money and you better get
right,
it, stick it to them while you can." And that may or may not be good advice. It more than likely will be bad advice. So we want to talk to you about this in our next
mhm,
segment. Call us anytime, 866-780-SAFE. That's 866-780-7233. Or the easiest thing, just go to ozarksretirement.com, click on the Contact Us button, and you could say, "Hey, Brad, I listened to you on the show with Heather. I want to come in and talk about how to file for Social Security." We'd be more than happy to do that. So ozarksretirement.com, click on Contact Us, and if you call our number at any time, there's always someone standing by to take your call. Okay, friends, let's do this. We've got Heather Schreiber on the show with us today, national Social Security expert. And before the break, we were talking about the importance of triggering at the right time. And Heather, I want to say this as because then I'm going to shut up and let you talk because you got so much knowledge on this. But I had someone come in yesterday. I had
mhm,
2 meetings yesterday and 6 walk-ins, the most we've ever had in one day. But in my one of my 2 meetings, I came across something I come across all the time, and that's someone with a pension, which is rare. But when they have a pension, I ask a qualifying question that I've learned people almost never know the answer to. And I say, "Great, you've got a pension. Does it pass on to your spouse?" And they're like, "I think so." Well, you think so or you know so? Do you know if it passes on? Well, I think it does. Does it pass on 100% of the benefit? I'm not sure. And then we
yeah,
realize we've uncovered a problem and they're looking at
right,
each other and she's over here like, "Wait, you mean you don't know whether or not the income we live on right now is going to pass on to me?
right,
And you don't know if it's the full amount?" And as you were saying before the break, it might be half of the amount. It might
mhm,
be three-fourths. It might be
right,
none. They may have chosen a single lifetime annuity payment as a pension. So this is a big deal because when it comes to Social Security, as we know, you lose the lower and retain the higher. So you're already
right,
going to lose one of the two spousal Social Security benefits. What if you lose the pension benefit also? So
right.
it's very possible to have a great plan in place while you're alive and it become a terrible plan that's in place once the first person passes, especially if it's the owner of the pension. So
Well, what
let
else do you lose? I mean, the other thing I'm just thinking out loud, and you also lose the joint filing status.
yes,
So,
you cut it
you
in
that's a
half.
critical question. You have to know, does this pass at what percentage does it pass? So you've identified potentially an income gap there. But then
Yes,
also, if it's only 50%, you've got your income gap. That's also pension. We can't change the tax qualification of a pension. It's always going to be taxable income. And now
yes,
we've gone from a married joint status to the next year. Usually for most people, it's a single status. It's called the widow's penalty, right?
yes.
So these are the things that we think about. And that does go into the claiming decision. How should we claim based upon what's gonna happen till to the last spouse to die? We have to be thinking about all of the things. What kinds of assets are we dealing with? What types? How are they taxed? How is
Yep.
this pension gonna pass? Is it at all? So we've identified one problem, which is we may have to replace or bridge income with something else? And how does this all work with how we the timing of our claim, the tax efficiency of the modeling of the strategy? It all comes together. This is
Yeah.
why we're so nerdy. We love this stuff, but it's the things that is so hard, like we said, for the average consumer to be like, "What?" Like, how do we do all of that? And how does that all go into the timing of the claim? It absolutely does. All of it.
Well, I know, and you mentioned this in the very first episode about the importance of several of these things, but I have posted in front of me because I'm still learning the numbers. It's brand new, first week of
Mhm.
2026 as we record this, and that's IRMA. You mentioned IRMA and
Mhm.
Medicare premiums and
Yeah.
it being a cliff regime, but so we've talked about tax brackets going from joint to single. Your IRMA bracket goes from joint to single, your
Yes.
Medicare premium surcharge bracket. So I'm sitting here looking at the numbers, and this is what blows my mind. I know you've seen these because we both work with the IRMA boys. So we got Paul
Mhm.
Morrison and Mark Anisi, and we both have been through IRMA University. From 2022 to 2031, so we're in the middle of this decade, it's estimated that 355 billion with a B billion dollars will be collected from IRMA surcharges going into the general account of the federal government. For 2026, it's expected that 9.1 million people will be affected by Irma, and this will translate into $32.3 billion in what I call stealth taxes, flush it down the toilet taxes, light fire to it taxes. It's just gone. And so I know
I'd
I
like
see
to know
online
what percentage of them are surprised when they get that IRMA letter. I bet you
they're
a
so
lot of them.
yeah, well, here's one that I thought of. So I thought, okay, I fall into the single bracket. So ding, you're hit right there. And I have been for many, many years. A lot of people don't know that, but I've been in the single filer bracket for, a decade and a half. And so I go, okay, so many people online will say, oh, that's just a rich people problem. Irma's never going to affect anyone. It's a
Mhm.
rich people problem. And I go, okay, let's scroll all the way down to the fourth tier for 2026. Next to the highest tier, if you make $205,001 because it's a cliff regime, 205,000 is a great income. But you know what? I talk to people all day long every day that make 200 grand. 205,000, it is a $649.20 Medicare premium for Part B. It's $83.30 for Part D.
Mhm.
I did the math on it, multiply that out by 12. That means you light fire to $8,790 of your $205,000. It's a
Yeah.
4.2% tax gone. Here's the government, 4.2% of my money. And that doesn't include federal tax, state tax, social security taxes, all these other taxes that are
Yep.
there.
Yep.
So that's why we always say, I know you work with the Ed Slot group. We see each other there all the time.
Mhm.
The number one thing that will separate you from the retirement of your dreams is taxes. It's the number one thing. We're going to pay them going and coming. And so we have to pay attention to all this. And so Social Security comes into that mix. It's a big part of it. How does someone even begin to know, Heather, how they should file? How do they figure it out?
I kind of touched on it before. I mean, first of all, your filing or claiming timing has nothing to do with anyone else. It really has to do, obviously, if you're single, it's a little bit less complicated, but still, there's still questions to be asked. I mean, you don't want to always, I mean, and people do, they start with, well, what's my break even? Because the idea is, well, if I wait, I'm taking the risk that I won't live long enough for that wait to pay off. The
Yeah.
problem is that what if you live too long? And I think that's what people forget
Yeah.
because, or they might say, well, I want to take it now while I'm in my quote go go years. I want to travel. The problem is and I get that.
Yeah.
Absolutely get that. But then you get into the situation where you live longer than you expected. 70%, we've all heard this, 70% of people age 65 or older are going to experience some sort of long term care event, right?
Right.
Usually it's women because we live longer. I can go on about on that for an hour as well. But so then is Social Security, if you take it early, how's that gonna pan out? So the question then is, what's the timing? You have to look at everything. It isn't just about the timing. I just retired, so therefore I claim benefits. Quite often that isn't the right choice
Yeah.
if we have other assets we're looking at. So we're looking at what other sources of income have you saved for retirement? What type are they? Because we want to create the foundation is Social Security, but we want to look at everything else. We're looking at how do taxes potentially impact. Hey, we just, one of the positives of One Big Beautiful Bill Act is that it did extend permanently, as permanent as it can be, right? Until Congress does something different, but it extended these favorable tax rates that were expected to sunset at the end of 2025. That's great, but we don't know. We're in the historically lowest tax rates we've had in I don't even know how long. That could change. So
Yeah.
you're always taking the risk. As Ed says, you're in bed with Uncle Sam, right? If you have too much of your money sitting in pre-tax IRAs or 401ks or whatever. So the point is there's so many things to think about. You want to look at, for example, if you're married, is there a marked disparity in your income benefits? That's going to be something that we want to hone in on because if you are the higher earner, your claiming decision, the timing of your claim is not only going to affect lifetime cash flow more, but it's going to absolutely affect how much cash flow is left for that survivor who is now in that single tax bracket, having to pay more taxes on less income and all of that. So, if there's a marked age disparity, that will come into play depending on who's the higher wage earner, who's not. What if there's children in the home or there's a
Yeah.
disabled child in the home?
Yeah.
All of those things come into play. So that's why I say for anyone listening, if you ever work with someone or hear someone say, you should take it at 62 and run because it's not going to be there. Okay. Bad advice. Or the opposite. If someone says everyone should wait until 70, period, end of story, that's also bad advice because the
Yes.
reality is everybody is not everybody. Every one of you listening has a unique set of circumstances, a unique desire about what you want to do with those assets. Even your legacy plan makes a difference to me. I want to know, well, is that important to you? That could factor in to how and when you claim. And it's a matter of balancing the absolute needs that you have. You want to you want to get your needs met through guaranteed income sources, right? And then there's some wiggle room, but you really just need to understand what your options are. And I'll say too, Social Security, if you think that you're going to call Social Security and to have this discussion with them, you got another thing coming.
Yeah.
They
That's
can't
not.
do that for one thing. They're there to answer the very basic questions. They're not there to really engage with you on this kind of level to say, okay, well, tell me about yourself. And I want to know. I mean, Brad knows if you'll call and ask me a question, I usually don't answer it right away. I'm like, well, tell me, and I ask 5 other questions
Yep. I've got to know
because
this first, Brad. Find
I
all this.
can't help it. I'm very long-winded. I can't even in emails. I mean, I can't help it. My poor husband in my text messages, he's like, "Oh, here she goes." But I'm very long-winded. But it's just because I want to know because these are people behind these numbers, right? And we're trying to create a tax efficient retirement strategy. So I don't I'm so passionate about it that I just want to make sure that people understand their choices. They also trust their gut, right? So I hear a lot of people these days, especially calling Social Security and getting different answers from the
Oh,
same agency, right?
right.
Trust your gut and
Yeah.
ideally work with someone, you know, that can help you navigate these things. Don't feel compelled just because it's Social Security telling you. If you don't feel right about what's being told to you, then don't do it
Yeah.
yet. Do
Yeah.
your research. Empower yourself with information before you do anything because this is such a critical decision. And it's usually a permanent decision. Of course, there's, exceptions to every rule, but most people don't want to withdraw their application and pay back all the benefits they've received. That works in some situations, but usually you're making a decision that will affect maybe just you, but it could affect your family down the road. It could affect, obviously, your surviving spouse. It could affect even an ex spouse. It could affect children. So you really just want to get it right and make sure that you are considering all the variables in your situation.
And I will even go one further to say it's not that it can, it will. All those decisions
Yeah.
will affect all those other people. And so those of you listening right now, this is why we have Heather on the show. That's why we're going to be having the upcoming Ask Heather questions. If you have a specific Social Security question, you can tailor it to your own specific need, or it can be about your friend. But send
Mhm.
us the question. Say, hey, here's the situation. My spouse was a teacher. I worked and I have a pension. I'm 5 years older. Here are our birth dates. When and how should we file? Whatever your question is, send it to us.
Yeah,
Just
we
send
love
it
those.
to
I love those.
Brad.
Yeah, and the chances are your question is what anyone else, a lot of other people would be thinking.
That's right.
There's usually a theme in the questions. So, yes, I can't wait to do the Ask Heather series.
It's going to be great. Just send your questions to Brad at guaranteedsafemoney.com. You can send them to Brad at ozarksretirement.com. Just go to ozarksretirement.com and click on the contact us button, and we'll get your questions answered on the show. So, Heather, let's do this. Let's shift gears and
Okay.
let's jump into something that I know is kind of consuming your life right now. It's
Mm.
consuming a lot of listeners, and that is that they're dealing with this sandwich generation issue where maybe they're in their 50s. A lot of times it is, but maybe it's their 60s. Hey, maybe they just retired and thought they were going to start their go-go years, and then they
Mhm.
find out mom or dad or both are having health issues, and they start dealing with, do we move them in with us? Do we move them into assisted living? Do we have someone come in part-time? I mean, life really changes in your retirement plan and how you spend your dollars when something like this happens, right?
Yes.
And it
And,
overwhelms everything that's going on
it
in your life.
does. 2025 was a whirlwind year, which is why I never made any resolutions because I still am like, "Wait a minute, that year went by so fast." And yes, you and I have talked about this endlessly in 2025 because
Mhm.
you've experienced it, but my mom unexpectedly came to live with us. She
Yeah.
lived in a different state. She lived in Indiana. Finances required that she, move quite unexpectedly. I had to sell her home, and she moved in with us. Now I'm still, trying to graduate children and, I have this business and I'm traveling. At that time, I was traveling sometimes three times a month. And so it was a pivot, a reality check. I mean, I was going back and forth trying to, sell our home. She, by the way, has Alzheimer's and vascular dementia. And so it was eye opening.
Mhm.
We've sort of come through the massive shock of it all, because we had to, my first, I don't know, 3 months of her living here was trying to get her acclimated to new doctors in a different state and getting her tested and doing all of these things that I just basically needed to get her tested for, get Medicare and all the things switched over, which was a whole eye-opening experience.
Mhm.
Um, but it really gave me a renewed or a passion for both those being cared for and the caregivers because I realized in doing my own research how many caregivers there are that are in this situation that I'm in. Everywhere I go, I would share the story and people would raise their hands doing the same thing. There's 63 million family caregivers of somebody. 53 million of them are unpaid.
Wow.
Most of them have full-time jobs. Hello. Right. So
Yeah.
I found myself, getting mom to bed and then I would stay up until 3 a.m. because I had to do that to balance it out. Um, and it came upon me quickly. And so I thought to myself, how many of those in my 50 something, generation or anybody, the average age, by the way, is 51 for someone who's caring for an aging parent or, whoever it is.
Yeah.
And 60% are women, which I found interesting. I finally got my mom into the senior center near us, which was a godsend. And I sat there the first day. I sat around these women, and I was so fascinated by all their stories. And every single one, and they were in range from like 70 to 95. Miss Lola's 95. I love her. But anyway, every single one were being cared for at home by their daughters and their husbands if they had husbands. But I was just fascinated by that and how many of them had actual jobs. And I was like, how are we doing this?
Well,
And
so
so it's a real crisis.
that was one of my questions because you had mentioned earlier how it's going to affect more women. We know that men are older and they die first for the most part, and
Right.
the average spouse is going to live about 14 and a half years longer than the death of their spouse. It's women more often than men. And so I guess there's more women in the facilities, long-term care facilities, and more women taking care of them, right?
That's right. And then so it's again going back to the claiming decision. Does that impact or factor in? You betcha,
Yeah.
right? Is that if that pension we were talking about in the earlier segment, if that's only a 50% or a 25% survivor or none, is that going to affect our claiming strategy? Absolutely. Is that going to lead to conversations about how are we going to handle if a long-term care event happens? And
Yeah.
that's where I think the disconnect is. It made me realize how many people are really thinking about at my age or, anybody that's in this sort of sandwich generation, or maybe they're moving out of it. Now they finally got the kids out of their home, but their parents are aging. I mean,
Yeah.
my husband's dad is also starting to show signs of dementia. And so now we're getting it at both sides. And so it's an awkward conversation to have, but you need to have it with parents because parents could be thinking, well, of course, my child's going to take me in or take care of me. And that can derail a retirement plan that you had in place if they don't Have they funded, if those conversations don't happen, then, you can create a retirement income plan for yourself,
Right.
but then it's derailed if you don't understand what the choices are. What have your parents saved, if anything? What is that gonna look like if
Mhm.
that were to happen, if you had to care for them? Are they gonna move in with you? Do you have a safe place for them to live? I mean, I re-outfitted my whole basement into an in-law suite for my mom and found that, the first time the home health aide came, I was like, "Oh, I felt like I was failing because I didn't have certain things on like I didn't have the grab bars, and I had a rug that kind of slipped on the floor." I was like, I felt like I was in first grade again, flunking a test. But these are the things I learned. And I had to fight with home health because they said, well, she was going to the senior center. She couldn't go without me or the bus that takes people. But they
Yeah.
said, well, she's not qualified for home health because she's physically able. I said, well, I beg to differ. She is
Mhm.
not cognitively able. And her neurologist has said her best line of defense for not progressing this disease is social interaction. So I had to fight to get her home health because I couldn't continue to take her on all these appointments. So I've learned so much. But the point I guess that I'm making is that these conversations need to happen because, you and I are the same age. I'm slightly
Yes.
older, which chagrins me at this very moment to say that out loud on national radio. We have to have these conversations, not only for our parents' sake, but for our own as we're
Mhm.
planning our own retirement because, my mom doesn't have a whole lot. And so the question then becomes, how does that change our plans, right? We have, saved and saved. And so we really weren't planning on, paying for an assisted living
Right.
private thing. And then Medicaid is a whole nother animal that requires a spin down of every single asset she has and scrutiny of the last 5 years of what she's done, any gifting she's done. It's a thing. So having those conversations with your parents or your aunts and uncle, whoever it is really critical when you're planning your own. And it then makes you think about what have I put into place if this should happen to me? Am I going to have enough money to just self pay if it's going to happen?
Yeah.
Now am I thinking, should I file at 62 for my go-go years when I've just experienced my mom who was diagnosed at 68. She's only 74 now. So she is young. That goes into my mind too
And
because I'm like, okay,
did you say a minute ago that 53 million caretakers are not receiving pay for what they're doing?
they are not about 9 million are, and it's through some sort of Medicaid waiver program, but
Okay.
the vast majority are not. And it's estimated that it's worth over $600 billion in unpaid work. It's crazy,
So I
right?
want to do this. I know your head's going to spin, Heather, and because mine is right now. She doesn't watch a timer or anything like that. She's just on doing her thing. But this blows my mind, and I knew this was going to happen.
Sorry. Did I
No,
go over?
we've got like four minutes left on the show, and we even skipped one whole topic. This stuff is so critically important. We can start talking about this when we're texting back and forth during the day, and we're both crazy
Mhm.
busy people. But I'll blink, and we spent 90 minutes talking,
Yeah.
and then we end up on the phone, and we just can't quit talking about all the different
We
things
do
that are
voice memos. Those work fabulously. We're
they
like,
do.
we can talk faster than we can text, so we do the voice memos.
That's it. I got 2 minutes in between meetings. Here we go.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that I wanna do. I want just to let everyone know, you can contact us, go to ozarksretirement.com, send us a message and say, "Hey, Heather was talking about things. This has made me think about stuff I've never
Mhm.
talked about with my spouse, planning for the future, for our parents, for the what ifs," and we'll talk about it because we only have a couple minutes to wrap up the show. And so here's what I wanna do. Call anytime, 866-780-7233, or go to ozarksretirement.com. Send Heather your question. We will cover it on the next Ask Heather episode. Heather, as
Love
we
it.
wrap up the show, which just flew by, you talked about something that was so important. It was preparing for something that's unknown. And how do you prepare for something that you don't know is coming? And so, every week I hear of someone that comes in and they're like, "Hey, did you know I put my mom in a long term care facility?"
Mhm.
No. Oh, yes. And, here's what's happened. It started off at this amount, and then we've already gone through a 6 month increase, and it's gone up $11,000. During a Christmas event this year, a client started off with their parent 18 months ago in a long term care facility at about 87,000 a year. It's currently at 111,000 18
Oof.
months later. How
Yeah.
do you absorb that cost of living into your own expenses and into your own retirement plan? So, Heather, what I know we like 2 minutes, but how do you plan for the unexpected in life? important to have a plan.
today, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't, and I know these are topics that are hard, right?
Yeah.
They're hard to have, they're hard to think about. No one wants to think about long-term care and what if about yourself, much less talking to your parents about it.
Mhm.
But when you live it, you're like, all I want to do is share it now. I'm like, it's something that you need to hear. You need to have these conversations and more about respecting each other and, understanding what they want and just getting it out there. I think if you come at it with love and concern for each other, because let's face it, I mean, one of the biggest fears in retirement outside of running out of money is being a burden on your loved ones. So I,
Mhm.
I look at this like it's the way that you approach it. What is it that you want? What can we do? God forbid something happens. What plans do you have in place that I need to know about? That's really a way to start that conversation and don't put off, till tomorrow what you could do today for yourself. I mean, it really does make me think, gosh, I got to make sure I have this in place. I don't want this to happen to my children. That's
Yeah.
it's made me. I'm like, okay, I've got pretty much everything in place. I need to make sure this is secure. I mean, I've already started to put everything in a file of everything for the kids because I don't want them they've seen how much stress this has put on me in the last year. I don't
Yes.
want that for them. And mom didn't want it for me
Right.
either. It just happened. And so thankfully I'm a spring into action kind of person. I'm the oldest child. I've got the oldest child syndrome. So I'm like, I'll fix it. That's what I do. But she says all the time, I don't know what I would do without you. And I feel badly. And I don't want her to feel badly. But, being proactive and having these conversations with parents out of love, I think is really important so that no one is blindsided if and when it happens.
Well, and thank you so much for sharing your part of your personal story. And I know we're going to
Mhm.
talk more about it in the future, but you said something that's so important. You said, she wasn't expecting this to happen. It was life events that happened
Yeah.
immediately that you're like, we have to deal with this. And that can be
Yes.
a flip, a fall, a heart attack, a stroke, something that's happening with a spouse or someone else in their
Yeah.
life. And these circumstances can change everything very quickly. And our colleague, good friend, America's IRA expert, Ed Slott, always says the number one goal, the number one purpose for every retiree should be to not become a financial burden on your children. Yeah, sure, we all
Right.
want to leave them money if we can, leave them great inheritance. But the first thing is don't bankrupt them because of your own situations that you didn't take care of and plan for. So we, I hate it that we're out of
Yeah.
time, but I do want to say this. We're going to talk more about this on upcoming episodes. That's why Heather's going to be on so much this year. But I think you've seen that when it comes to retirement planning, oh, sure, you can go to the guy or the girl that's
Mhm.
the advisor in town that hangs their hat on. I'll get you the biggest return, better than everyone else. And that's all they hang their hat on because it's all they do is just the return. But I think you've learned, if you learned anything else today, so much goes into retirement income planning. It's not just what stock, bond, mutual fund, annuity you own. It's not just about Social Security, when to trigger and how. It's about long-term care planning. It's about life insurance. It's about estate planning. It's about tax planning. And that's why we are RICPs and TPCPs. We want you to work with people who are experts in doing this every single day. So, Heather, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to put a pause on it for now, but we're going to come back together here in just a few short weeks and jump right back in with where we left off today. So, thank you so much for joining us.
Sounds great. I feel like this was 5 minutes, so I can't wait for the next one.
It truly does. If you're listening right now, go to ozarksretirement.com, click on the contact us button. We will get right back in touch with you and we will start working on your safe and secure retirement income plan. Hey, thanks for listening. As always, have a great day and may God bless you and your family.